Hello, welcome to this DCS A-10C2 tutorial. In this video, I will cover ECM, electronic countermeasures, your regular countermeasures, and your jammer. So to begin, during our startup, we put our jammer over here on our outer wing pylon. By default, your countermeasures after startup will be in the standby position. So if we want to enable our countermeasures, we'll come to our master CMS mode select switch and put them to the manual or semi-manual position. I personally prefer to keep them in manual, but you can also run it in semi. It just lets the plane select what it wants to do, but you have to still activate it, but it can be a bit wasteful. So I'll keep it in manual. In manual, we still need to turn on our jammer. You can see that it has the jammer in the off position. So to enable our jammer, we will press this switch up, the electronic countermeasure jammer switch, and then let it come back to the center position. So it's just a right click, hold, release. And now our jammer is ready, and it tells us our chaff, our flares. And it will also tell us our chaff and our flares up here. Currently, we can see our jammer is in standby. If we had it in the off position, it would tell us off. So I'll put this back forward and release it. We're back in standby. To enable our jammer, we can press our Z-axis command for our countermeasure switch, HOTAS CMS Z-axis. If I press and hold that, we now see operational. If I press and hold it again, it will put it back to standby. There's no harm in leaving this operational all the time. You can currently see it is selecting an air program to help jam against aerial targets. If I click the Select Jammer Program button, it will change to SAM1. Clicking it again will change to SAM2. Clicking it again will change to AAA. So that will configure our jammer to jam each specific type of threat. In the description of this video, I will have a link to a sheet that tells you what you should be jamming or what mode you should be in to jam a specific thing. So SAM1 and SAM2 are both for older and newer generation SAMs. Different SAMs will fall into different categories. AAA will be for AAA threats on the ground that are radar guided, and air for aerial targets. Once again, the sheet in the description will list what you should have your jammer set to for each specific type of threat, mainly relevant for SAMs, because different SAMs will fall into these different categories. As far as your chaff and flare goes, we can utilize our CMS switch, CMS forward, back, left and right, forward, aft, left and right. So if I press left, it's going to pop a whole bunch of flares in manual mode. If I press right, it's going to pop a whole bunch of chaff. If I press forward, it'll pop a single flare. And if I press aft, it'll pop a single chaff. Generally, I'll just spam the big drops if I'm under threat, because they give you so many countermeasures to use. No sense getting shot down if you still have a whole bunch. So once again, left for a whole bunch of flares, forward for one flare, right for a whole bunch of chaff, aft for one chaff. On the left of our countermeasures display up front, we have our EW radar. This will tell us possible radar threats that we detect out around us. The diamond signifies what the plane is saying is our priority threat. And then everything else is just various threats. In the link that I will have for the countermeasure program or the jammer program to use, it will also list the symbologies that you'll see on your EW. This does not tell you distance, only direction. So this is telling me I have a whole bunch of stuff off to my about, 7 or 8 o'clock, which just so happens to correspond with all the fleet that we have out there. So that's what all of this is. Like AE is an Aegis defense for the fleet and that kind of thing.
Warning, autopilot.
Alrighty, I'm going to pause the video here and fly out towards a SAM field, and I'll show you what this looks like in action. Alrighty, I'm going to pick up here to show a nice example of navigating. So I want to navigate to this SAM field. I'm going to look for a landmark, in this case this Georgia line, and I know where I want is somewhere to the south of there. So I'll look over here. I'll look for that Georgia line. All right, here's the Georgia line. And where I'm looking for is somewhere near a river down in here by a road. So it's about south of this little hump. So I'll look straight south and look for a river and a road. So here's the hump. I'll look straight south, and here's a river and a road. So I know it's somewhere in here. So that looks about right where they intersect. It's right between the 2 points. They intersect right there. So I'm going to put a mark point right there. In this case, mark point E, and that should take me right to that SAM field. I'll select mark point E, and it's going to take me right there. So as a secondary check, I see mark point E is directly off my nose at about 152 for 79 miles. I'll use my ruler tool. About 155 for 77 miles. So I know I'm pretty spot on, or pretty close to it. I put my mark point between here, but they're actually about there. But it's close enough for my general navigation. So it shows how quickly you can find and mark a point rather than spending ages typing in coordinates. And just giving a good example of that. As I'm flying in, I'm going to look at the sheet that I have linked in the description. I'll show it here now. And I know that out there are SA-15s and SA-11s. So here we can see SA-11 and SA-15, and they both require SAM-2 on our jammer. So I'll go ahead and set my jammer to SAM-2. Here we can see the symbols. One will be a 15, one will be 11 that will display on our EW page. And there's some more information here telling you what you need to do to evade them, firing distances, a whole bunch of good information. So if you utilize knee boards, it might be helpful to add this to them. All right, so I know Chaff will defeat them both, or will help defeat them, and I need to put my jammer to SAM-2. So let's go ahead and do that now. Jammer to SAM-2. And now on the subject of your jammer, it works by making it more difficult for a threat to lock you, but this only works from a distance. There is a distance called a burn-through distance, where if they get within a certain amount of miles from you, your jammer will no longer be effective, and they'll be able to lock you regardless. So it just makes things more difficult for the opponent, so that makes them have to get a lot closer to lock you up than if you didn't have your jammer running. Alright, I'm still about 66 miles out, so I'm going to pause here again and pick up with you once I'm a bit closer. Alrighty, so I'm approaching the SAM field. We can see if you go back to our map tutorial in the general playlist, we're approaching the search detection circle. Once we get closer, we'll be in the engagement circle, so I'll go ahead and pick up here. And I'm actually going to turn off my jammer to help them lock us up from further out. And then when they start locking me and we'll get a lock tone, I will go ahead and turn on my jammer, and hopefully that'll make them drop the lock. Here we see the SD. This is the Snowdrift search radar, search dish for the SA-11s. So our plane is detecting there's a threat, SAM threat out in front of us. And there's the SA-11. We are now detecting that. And it's somewhere out in front of us. I'm going to go ahead and gain some speed. Usually when I'm cruising around, I'm only about here, 3/4 throttle. You can be extremely fuel efficient. Even if you're back a little bit, you just won't move as fast. But you can cruise for hours in this thing. But I'll go full throttle and get myself some speed to help evade these missiles when they come in. And they should be starting to lock up and fire on me any moment. Alright, that rapid beeping we hear is showing they're locking us, so I'll engage my jammer. And hopefully that'll interrupt that. If it doesn't, they'll fire on us anyway. But this jammer might make it so they have to fire at us when we're a bit closer rather than farther out. Now that we know what this sound, this rapid beeping means a lock. Alright, and that louder rapid beeping means we have a missile inbound, and we can see it by the circle on our EW, meaning that SA-11 is fired on us. So I'm going to pop Chaff, and I'm going to put the threat on my 3 o'clock or my 9 o'clock line. So it's now on my 9 o'clock line. I'm popping Chaff, and this should make it more difficult for them to hit us. I see it starts to get a bit close. I'm popping Chaff this whole time. I'm going to do a cold defensive turn. I'll dive down, get some extra speed. Then I'll put them back on my 3 o'clock line and go the opposite way. Alright, those missiles have lost block, and I'm safe. I'll try and demonstrate that again, but this time I'll show a dead zone for your EW. So if you have the top of your plane or the belly of your plane towards a target, the warning will go away because there's a dead spot in your detection. Just know that if you have a threat incoming and you have your belly or the top of your plane towards a target, you probably still have the threat inbound, you're not safe. Just keep that in mind. When you level back out, you'll have the threat back up on your EW and your plane's warning. Alright, turned off my jammer to help them lock us up again. Alright, the rapid beeping, they're locking. Alright, they stopped blocking me. Generally, when you're in an A-10, you're not going to be directly engaging SAMs. A fighter with a anti-radiation missile, a harm, will take them out for you and do seed. In some later tutorials, I'll cover doing pop-up attacks and how to engage a SAM on your own if you don't have fighter cover available. Alright, so there's actually the SAM field, and there's the mark point from earlier, so it's pretty dang close. Close enough to get me in the general area. Alright, they're firing. I put my belly towards the threat, and now I no longer have the threat sound. I level out, and I'll get the threat sound back. Alright, I'm going to pop the rest of my chaff, and try and get out of here. I'm a bit close to continue demonstrating that, but that let you know how pointing your belly or the top of your plane towards the threat will make the threat disappear from your EW. You just need to be aware that it's still coming. Alright, that covers basic missile evasion. And they fired again. That's what that sound was. And we can see in M, circles means they're firing. And that rapid high pitch tone. We also have a launch on our missile warning system. And I'm just going to keep flying away, and I'll do some evasive maneuvers. Pop some chaff, I'm now low, and I'll eventually be out. And now I have no more chaff. So I'm actually going to duck behind these hills. Nope, it hit me. You're not very fast in this thing. See, as I said, you want to keep away from getting into those SAMs. Or if you're trying to be evasive, get down lower and try and break the lock. I didn't get down low fast enough. But that's a nice example of what to do and what not to do. So that time I didn't keep it on my 3 or my 9 line, and it came after me. If you keep it on your 3 or 9 line and you're popping your countermeasures, you have a much higher chance of surviving. Alright, that covers everything. Thanks for watching.